Moving on now, we're going to talk about pastoralists. And pastoralists are folks who make their livelihood by herding animals and using all of the parts of the animals in order to survive. Generally, these are in desert environments where growing things just isn't a really good option. And because human beings all over the world are so resourceful in any type of geographic environment, pastoralists have developed a way of life that relies upon the use of their animals for most of their needs. So importantly, pastoralists are not farmers, right? They live in environments like desert environments that really support animal herding. And so with herding, you have to have animals that can be herded, right? So not a lot of pigs, not a lot of chickens, but certainly pastoralists will keep herds of sheep, goats, cattle, camels, yaks, reindeer, depending on the particular geographic environment and what kind of herding animals exist there well and are plentiful. It means that they have to be, very involved with breeding their animals or animal husbandry. And not only are they very involved in breeding them, the animals become a really important symbolic part of their social life. So in some cases, people are given, like say a young boy or a young girl might be given an animal at birth, and that animal may share their same name. At certain parts of the child's life as they're growing up, they may have certain rituals that they do with or for their animal or animals. Often in these types of societies, the larger your herd means the wealthier you are. So rather than money in a traditional sense, rather than money, the size of the herd signified your status and wealth. Today, of course, just like foragers, all pastoralists are involved in the global economy, but it doesn't mean that their herds aren't still the most important part of their sort of symbolic and social life and even political life as well in terms of status. So they may use their animals for a wide variety of things, not just food, as you might imagine. And when I say they use their animals for food, I don't mean that they're slaughtering animals and eating meat, because if they slaughtered their herd, they would have no more herd, right? So they try to keep their animals healthy and alive as long as they can. And they utilize the products of those animals. So for instance, they would use the milk in order to make cheese. And yogurt. They would utilize, some of them utilize the blood of the animals. So the Maasai people who live in Tanzania and Kenya and East Africa, they will often drink blood and milk of their cattle for protein, especially when they're out herding their animals and they don't have access to foods back at their home base where generally their families have stayed. They will also use the parts of the animals for clothing, for making tents. They will use the stomachs as bags by drying them out because they are fairly watertight. So they try not to waste any part of their animals and keep them alive so that they can continually utilize their animals for their needs. Third, they are semi-nomadic. So they have these home bases, right? And in the desert, you might see a large tent or multiple large tents where the families will stay. And that is the home base from which generally the men will take their horses or maybe snowmobiles, depending on where they are living in the world, and go out with their herds to find pasture for the herds to eat. It might be a yurt, which is a rounded tent-like structure in certain parts of the world as well. They engage in what's called transhumance, and transhumance is basically the seasonal migration of people and animals over long distances. So in the Bakhtiari, for instance, these are folks who live in an area around Iran, in the Zagros Mountains. They may take their herds of goats or other animals out into the desert to find forage, right, to find plant material for the goats to eat. And they will stay out there, perhaps for months, moving around so that the goats can have what they need to survive and be healthy and produce more goats, baby goats, right? Goatlings, kids, produce more kids. And they will then come home when they're done with that seasonal time period to remain in the home base for a period of time as well. There is a very clear sexual division of labor generally with pastoralists, in which men will herd and women will maintain all of the things that need to be done back at the tent in the domestic sphere. And because their planting abilities are greatly limited, they may trade for foods or other goods, but can often, find what they need by trading with partners who are also either herding peoples or potentially peoples who bring their goods to a central market so that they can trade.